Hello, and welcome to the channel. I remember how excited I was for the 2019 MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar when it first came out. It seemed so future-proof. High-performance Intel processor with the ability to attach an external GPU for what, at the time, seemed like unlimited expandability in regards to performance. I snapped up a Pro-level card and plugged it in, all while imagining how I wouldn't need to upgrade my laptop for years to come. Apple, on the other hand, had other plans. Just a few short years later, they introduced a redesigned MacBook with their own custom silicon, and it blew every MacBook before it out of the water. Fast forward a few years, and now Apple is on their fourth iteration of the silicon, and their performance gains with each generation show no signs of slowing down. For creatives, there's never been a better time to grab one of these machines and unleash the power of their imagination with what seems like unlimited capability on your lap or desk. All this unlimited capability, however, comes at a price. As you configure your machine, the price can skyrocket pretty quickly, and if you are in the market for one of these machines, you have undoubtedly come across tons of information on how amazing even the first generation of Apple Silicon was. Which begs the question, if you don't have unlimited budget to go along with your unlimited creativity, does picking up one of the high-end devices from a few generations ago make sense? I have a lot of people ask me this very question, and since I have every generation of Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, I thought I would make a video comparing their performance in the most asked about applications: Blender, After Effects, Photoshop, and Premiere. Each generation of MacBook is the top specification available at the time, and I also threw in a Razer Blade laptop, since the question of how it compares to a Windows machine also comes up quite frequently. Blender is up first. All devices are running in their highest power mode, and the Razer Blade is running plugged in on high power. This is the classroom project with cycles and GPU rendering. Although the M1 and M2 handle modeling just fine, their render performance is far below the M3, M4, and 4090. If you model on the go and render on another machine, any of these will be awesome. If it's going to be your only device, I wouldn't suggest anything below the M3 for rendering projects, unless you have small projects or a lot of time. Next up, I switched to CPU rendering. The results are much closer when it comes to CPU performance, with the M3 and M4 actually being faster than the i9 in the Razer Blade. The M2, and even the M1 for that matter, are not too far behind. So if your workloads are CPU driven, these are all great choices, and you can save quite a bit going with an older MacBook. But the M3 and M4 CPU performance are ridiculously impressive if you have the budget. Next up is After Effects. The first thing I tried is playing a non-pre-rendered complex test project in full resolution to see how many frames per second each machine got, and if it was usable. Sadly, you won't be switching off auto resolution on any of these machines if you work with complex projects, as even the newest M4 MAX struggled with playback. The M4 did peak around 14 frames a second, while all the others struggled to get half of that. I'll leave a link to the test project in the description if anyone is interested in downloading it and seeing how their current machine compares. As far as the rendering of said complex projects goes, the M4 MAX really shows off what it can do with this test. It comes out on top, with the M3 MAX and Razer Blade finishing about a minute behind it. The M2 MAX finished almost 2.5 times slower than the M4 MAX at 6 minutes and 15 seconds, and the M1 pulls up the rear, taking 3 minutes longer than that, at just over 9 minutes to complete the render. At this point, you're probably thinking that if you use After Effects as a big part of your workflow, the M4 MAX is the way to go. And I can say very confidently after using it to complete all of the motion graphics in this video, you would be correct. The M4 MAX is a beast with After Effects, and it was a joy to use on the M4 MAX MacBook. If you are a Photoshop or Premiere user, you'll also have no worries there. Running the Puget Bench benchmarks for each of them showed similar results. The M4 MAX absolutely dominated in the Photoshop benchmark, scoring higher than any device I've ever used. The surprising result here was that each of the MacBooks held their own in this test, and even the oldest of the bunch, the M1 MAX, beat out the higher spec'd Razer Blade 16. The M4 MAX and the Adobe Suite, in my experiences so far, really work well together, and although I am a Final Cut Pro user, which is super optimized for the Apple Silicon, The Premier benchmarks are also really strong. In the Premier test, the M4 MAX came out on top again, but it was not as far ahead as it was in some of the other tests, with the Razer Blade giving it a run for its money in this test. All in all, I just wanted to make a short and sweet video on my experiences with the M4 MAX MacBook. I was a little heavier in the motion graphics in this video than I usually am, but I wanted to really push it to see how smooth my experience was using it for 3D rendering in Blender, compositing in After Effects with images and vectors I worked on in Photoshop and Illustrator, and editing in Final Cut. There is no question that this is one of the best experiences I've had, creating a video on a laptop. But that doesn't mean that the past MacBook devices were a bad experience. It's just that the M4 MAX was a little better. If you have an old Intel MacBook, realistically, any of the M series MacBooks would be an awesome upgrade. If you have an M1 or M2 and thinking about upgrading, and you use some of the software I tested here, specifically Blender, After Effects, and Photoshop, the M3 Max and M4 Max are a solid upgrade. If you are using an M3 Max now, and are wondering if you are missing out with the M4, you can rest assured that although the M4 is faster, it's not a huge leap forward from what you are using now. Now, when that M4 Ultra comes out, that's going to be a different story altogether, and also another video for another time. I really hope you found this video helpful. Please feel free to leave your questions in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer what I can. Thank you all again for stopping by the channel and watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, everybody wants to say, but it's not